nearly every brand we work with reports back to us that when they switch to Australian cotton, they notice an immediate uptick in the quality of the product, even in just the hand feel and what it looks like. And consumers really respond to that as well. And then, of course, what it represents is sustainability. So both human, our people, and our environmental sustainability. And so brands really need those things now. It's not just about quality, it's about all of those other attributes.
Hello and welcome. I'm Elizabeth Formosa, the founder of Fashion Equipped and devourer of all things fashion, business, and mindset. In this podcast, I'm speaking with thought leaders, change makers, and entrepreneurs about the business side of fashion and everything in between. Fashion Business Mindset is your front row seat to real stories from designers, brands, entrepreneurs, makers, and mentors. We'll discuss how to launch and grow a fashion business and give you insider access to the future of fashion. So let's do this together and ensure that you're equipped to make the fashion business your business. Welcome back to Fashion Business Mindset. I'm so excited to kick off season 5 of the podcast by welcoming Brooke and Ashley Hollis from Cotton Australia. Cotton Australia is the peak representative body for the Australian cotton growing industry. Brooke currently leads Cotton Australia's work to connect the credentials of the Australian cotton industry with stakeholders throughout the textile supply chain. Brooke has 3 decades of experience in strategic communication, marketing, project management, community and stakeholder engagement, and is a passionate advocate for sustainability, natural fibres, and Australia's cotton farmers. Ashley is the brand relationship manager at Cotton Australia, with 20 years experience in retail, fashion, education, and stakeholder engagement. Ashley facilitates brand and industry business development and supply chain interaction to drive demand for Australian cotton. Ashley's in-depth knowledge and network within the Australian cotton and wool industry, including sustainability and supply chain development, has enabled her to pioneer several successful collaborations, projects, programs, and educational content across the supply chain, from farm to fashion. This was a dynamic discussion that really shone a light on the Australian cotton to market strategy, supply chain solutions, sustainability, circularity, and traceability, why brands should consider including Australian cotton in their collections, the benefit of the Australian cotton mark and global sustainability programs, education and resources that are available to you, the Australian Cotton Forum and Camp Cotton, both coming up in April, and an exciting roadmap of powerful strategies that Cotton Australia is undertaking. Now, I've linked all of the valuable resources that we discussed in our show notes. I enjoyed every minute of my chat with Brooke and Ashley, and no doubt you will too. So let's dive in. Brooke, Ashley, welcome to the Fashion Business Mindset podcast.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Thanks. Can't wait to dive into all things Cotton Australia today. So to set the scene, can you please tell us a little bit about yourselves and share some insights into your roles and accountability at Cotton Australia?
So I'm Brooke and I've been working with Cotton Australia for over 20 years now in lots of different roles, working with our farmers on their sustainability credentials and in the communication and marketing side and the education teams. But more recently, my role has been to head up the cotton to market strategy for Cotton Australia, which is really all about our engagement with the supply chain, from brands and retailers right through to not-for-profit organisations and fashion and textiles organisations. So it's been a really interesting journey over the last 10 years or so.
Amazing. Ashley?
Yeah, so I have around about 2 decades of knowledge covering from retail, fashion, supply chain, education, and agricultural sector of the Australian fashion industry. And when I came to Cotton Australia, I brought that wealth of experience to the table, and now I am the brand relations manager. And I have a pivotal role in our cotton to market strategy as well. So foraging and championing sustainable partnerships and actively contributing to the cultivation of demand of our premium fibre. So that's predominantly my role. So yeah.
Amazing. What dynamic roles. I can't wait to dive into everything that you amazing ladies are doing in your space. So just for our audience, Cotton Australia is the peak representative body for the Australian cotton growing industry. Can you please talk us through its primary purpose and touch on the ethos and values at Cotton Australia?
Thank you, Elizabeth. Yes, we're Cotton Australia. We're a non-for-profit organisation, and as you mentioned, we are the peak body representatives for our Australian cotton growers. So we support roughly around about 1,500 cotton farmers across New South Wales, Queensland, Victoria, WA, and Northern Territory. And 90% of those farmers are family-owned businesses as well, which equates for around about 80% of the crop. And we're funded by a voluntary levy, and we work really, really closely with our growers and also government, media, and other agricultural industries, and also with the communities, which is very important. Our 2 industry partners that we partner with is Cotton Research and Development Corporation and the Australian Cotton Shippers Association, and they help to guide industry strategy. And we really advocate for policy reform as well. Brooke, I might get you to touch on our values and ethos within the business.
Yeah, sure. So because we're a peak body for the farmers, really farming and farmers are at the centre of everything we kind of do and believe in. And so there's some really key values, I suppose. One of them is sustainability. So, and that's being sort of excellent in sustainability across the board, whether it be environmental sustainability or the way we look after our people, really critical. I would say another key value is how we contribute to our communities. And we've just got some new research that shows that cotton farmers are more likely to volunteer in their communities than any other ag industry. So we're really integral in those communities. And when we take people out to see and immerse themselves in the cotton industry, it's something they really do comment on, is how connected we are to each other, but also to our communities and all of the ways we contribute there. And I think the other key thing is that we're grounded in science. We spend $25 million a year or so on research and development every year. And most of that money comes from our cotton farmers themselves. And they direct the research that's going to make the most sense out there on the farm. So a lot of what we do is driven by science. And that has put us in great stead in terms of now selling our cotton into the world market to brands and retailers that kind of need to see the evidence behind some of the claims that we make as a business.
Yeah, love it. So science, sustainability, support, there's a lot of dynamics at play. If we were to dive a little bit deeper into the support for the farmers, so 1,500 farmers, and as you said, their families, what kind of support, if we were to say, kind of, I guess, dilute it into exactly what support they're getting on a regular basis, what would that be, just to share with our audience so they gain a deeper understanding?
I can jump in if you like. Yep.
Yeah.
Look, the main ways that we support them is through our network of regional managers. So we've got people that live in these cotton communities that go out and actively work with our farmers one-on-one and in groups to implement our sustainability program, for example. So that's a really key focus of that role. But importantly also, they're the eyes and ears for our business. So they kind of go out there and scope out what our cotton farmers are worried about, things that are kind of impacting the farming system. And then that kind of gets fed back into our policy team, who then advocates for our farmers in the halls of Parliament House in Canberra and in New South Wales and Queensland predominantly. So the way we support them really is through, making sure that they're being well represented and that they're able to do their job, and a job that they do really, really well over a long period of time.
Yeah, amazing. So let's dive into sustainability. So since it's such a huge factor, and I know that, sustainability, it's a hot topic in fashion. It's definitely moved forward in leaps and bounds over the last few years in our industry. But as you said, sustainability has been woven through what farmers have done for generations. This is not new to cotton farming. So I'd love to share with our audience a little bit more about that, because I'm aware that the cotton industry has been managing on-farm sustainability for many, many decades. So can you talk us through that sustainability framework?
Yeah, sure. So the first thing I want to say is that we believe sustainable fashion starts with sustainable farming. You can't claim you've got a sustainable product in fashion unless you know where that product is coming from, right back to where the seed gets planted in our case. And we're really open about that, and we're really keen to work with brands and retailers and be very transparent about what we're doing on our farms. So we've got a range of programs, and I know Ashley's going to kind of jump into some of the ways we report to stakeholders and assess our environmental performance. But we do have an all of industry sustainability framework called the People Planet Paddock framework. And underneath that, it basically sets the course for our industry's work over the next 10 to 20 years. So we're setting targets, and we've got indicators across a whole range of topics you'd expect to see, like soil health, biodiversity, water use efficiency, climate, people, etc. And so we've got these kind of really great targets that we all then invest as an industry towards. So that could be, from Cotton Australia's perspective, making sure that the My BMP program, our sustainability program, is fit for purpose and is achieving and working towards those targets. It could be helping us work out where we should invest in our research and development and in our science to help further generate those efficiencies at farm level. And we've got some amazing results over the last couple of decades about how we've been able to really reduce our impact here in Australia.
Amazing. So maybe Ash, you can jump in regards to the accreditation, the programs, and in particular, then we'll dive into, how meaningful that is to consumers and then also to brands and what it actually means from a transparency perspective.
Absolutely. So I guess I just want to make one point. When I came into the cotton industry, I had a very minimal understanding about the industry and what happened on farm as well, and in the audits that took place. And what I found very, very exciting, actually, in the mid-90s, the cotton industry faced a bit of criticism. And since then, they took the initiative to respond to that by implementing one of the world's first environmental and sustainable audits throughout the whole industry. So as Brooke mentioned, it set the ambitious goals and targets spanning over 10 to 20 years. And since then, there's been regular progress assessments and updates and reports to ensure that we're meeting those targets, that we're on track to fulfilling our 20-year goals and so forth. And we're very transparent industry as well. So we've actually put those out onto our Cotton Australia website, and you can also check the CRDC website for those update reports as well. And I guess your question, when it does touch into our certification, so our Australian Cotton Mark program and our licensing program, it's such a big program for our growers in terms of what they've put in and what the outcome is. And in the last year and a half, because I've only been with Cotton Australia, I think it's coming up to 2 years. And since we've come on board, and over the last 2 years, we've increased, for example, this is just one figure I'm throwing out there, we increased our product units bearing the mark by 91% since 2022, which is an incredible achievement for the Cotton to Market strategy as well, and program. And our brand partners, we actually increased by 48% in the last year or so. So we're seeing brands wanting to be a part of the program and wanting to also have and ensure that when they're saying that their product is Australian cotton, that we've put some kind of checks in place to ensure that they can call that out, and really push that through their messaging and all their marketing, and really for their consumers as well to understand that that product is Australian cotton and it has been given the tick of approval by Cotton Australia as well.
Yeah, I'd love to dive deeper into the Australian Cotton Mark, because Many in our audience tuning into this will be very interested in terms of more about what it is, how it actually brings credibility to the product, to the supply chain, and how they can get involved. So could we go through that step by step? So if a brand contacts you and says,
Yeah.
hey, I want to know more about using the mark, where do I even start? And what is it going to bring to my business?
We have 2 cotton marks that brands can use on their product, and it's free to use in our licensing program at the moment. So we have a blend mark, which is 60% or more Australian cotton, and we have an Australian cotton mark, which is 95% more or cotton. And that mark can be applied to a product, a swing tag, a label, etc. And so it's a pretty simple process for us to work with a brand to get them to apply to use the Australian cotton mark on their products. And as Ashley said, we've seen a huge increase in both the number of brands and the number of products that are carrying that mark. And what that mark stands for is a number of things. It's all about representing Australia's cotton farmers and their communities and their families. So that support for regional communities, agriculture, and our communities out there in cotton country. It stands for quality. So we grow some of the highest quality cotton in the world in Australia, and we're really well recognised for that. We sell every bale of cotton we grow every year. Yeah. And nearly every brand we work with reports back to us that when they switch to Australian cotton, they notice an immediate uptick in the quality of the product, even in just the hand feel and what it looks like. And consumers really respond to that as well. And then, of course, what it represents is sustainability. So both human, our people, and our environmental sustainability. And so brands really need those things now. It's not just about quality, it's about all of those other attributes. So we have no problem selling the concept of Australian cotton to a brand. Where it kind of gets more difficult is where Ashley's kind of work comes in, and that's in helping brands join the dots in their supply chain and apply to use the Australian cotton mark. And I might just leave it to Ashley to explain more about how that process works.
Yeah, so I've got a 6-step process when it comes to a brand approaching us and wanting to use Australian cotton in their supply chain. And number 1 is understanding that brand's values and understanding their current sourcing network as well, which is very important because as all brands know and all sourcing teams know, it doesn't happen overnight. It does take some time with suppliers to pull through a particular type of fibre through their system. So understanding that from the brand, that's number 1. Number 2 is actually educating the staff about what Australian cotton is and what the industry is. We find that really underpins any of the decision making within the teams that are going to procuring that cotton come through their suppliers. Secondly,
can I just jump in there? Sorry, add something there. Because really, we're not really interested in working with brands that just want to do a one-off capsule collection in Australian cotton. It's a much more strategic kind of partnership than that. It's really about embedding Australian cotton in the long term in the sourcing strategy for all the right reasons. And if that means it takes longer and there's training required and we get our brands out onto our farms to be really comfortable with our story, then we're really happy to spend that time and do that because we want to partner for the long term. Yeah. Sorry, Ashley, I just thought that was really...
No, that's fine. That's valuable. Number 3 is helping them with that transition to pull through that Australian cotton through their suppliers or new suppliers that they may be looking at. And then 4 is actually working with them to gather all that chain of custody information and making the application through our system for the Australian cotton mark. And then point 5 is working with the marketing team, so engaging. So working with the marketing team to create that promotional campaign about that Australian product coming through the system and to their customers and how that reflects back to our stories that we want to share with consumers as well. So what Brooke mentioned earlier, cotton communities, the women in cotton, and what's happening at that grassroots levels. We really leverage the brand's audience to tell our story to their customers. And lastly is collaboration. So as Brooke mentioned, we really want to deepen relationships. We don't want to just have relationships for a one-off line or a one-off collection. We actually want to deepen those relationships and co-invest in cotton projects that are happening on farm as well. And I know Brooke has probably 2 examples a bit later on, but we do have the our circularity project that we have with Sheridan as well, which is a fantastic project to look up, and we can give you the link for that, Elizabeth, to put
Yeah,
in the
amazing.
podcast information as well. So that's how we there's a 6-step process there. And then some of these relationships, Brooke has had for many, many years as well. And we want brands who want to be in it for the long haul, not just the short haul. So I think that's very important to us.
Yeah, I absolutely love it. As you said, you want that commitment there, you want longevity, and we know that the demand for Australian cotton is only increasing. So from a commercial perspective, it's smart business to be definitely looking into how brands, whether they're already stocking Australian cotton, can scale, or those who haven't, how they can get started. So just for those who potentially are looking to get started, you mentioned about the supplier connection. So if I'm a fashion brand right now and I've just been sourcing my, usual cotton, and I maybe don't even know where it's come from, but I know it's 100% cotton, it might even be 100% organic. And now, I'm very focused on my impact pillars and I want the Australian cotton in my business. If my current manufacturers don't have access, or that they can't provide me with the Australian cotton, how do I get there? Do you help? Do you make recommendations on who I could connect with in terms of supply chain partners? Yeah, how do they start?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. And I get asked this a lot all the time. I think it's foremost, we need to, as Cotton Australia, we don't have any kind of preference, if we say, for suppliers. We work with all suppliers, and we work really closely with our merchants as well, our merchant community and their clients as well, which are the spinning mills as well. So we actually have a really, really strong supply listing as well, which we are more than happy to share with brands who are wanting to tap into different markets and different areas. I can kind of give advice on some areas that are doing some really great quality yarns for denim, or yarns for plain knit tees and things like that. I can definitely guide them through that process and eliminate certain suppliers based on different kind of values or output that they're wanting to make. And I work with the brand that way. So kind of understanding, right, if you don't have a current supplier, here are within that same region, or if you're looking outside that country in a different region, here are some other suppliers you can make contact with. And generally when they try and reach out, and if they don't get a response, then I kind of can step in and try and connect them through a different channel as well. So that's kind of where I step in the process.
Luckily, from our side, our immediate customer is the spinning mill. And so we've got really good visibility of that first kind of tier from our side. And then often on the brand side, they've got good visibility, at least to tier one supplier, and then potentially to the fabric, but not always to the spinner. So what we try to do is work from both ends of the supply chain with the brands, our knowledge, their knowledge, and try and establish the supply chain that way. If their suppliers can't source Australian cotton, we kind of give them some tools to help work with their supplier about the questions that they could ask. And sometimes, we can work through those issues with them and those challenges, because there's a lot of Australian cotton available in the market, particularly in those premium markets with the brands that we work with. So there are lots of ways we can help, but it is a bit of a, like a kind of a process. Definitely gets easier. Like once we've worked with that brand on that first set of product, we both learn a lot from both sides, and it gets much, much easier every time after that.
Amazing. And are there particular regions, so outside of Australia, is it China, India, Indonesia? Who are the biggest markets in terms of where is our Aussie cotton going and then being turned into garments?
Great question. So our markets sort of change depending on supply and demand, because we're actually in the commodity game, right? We're selling bales of cotton into a commodity market, and we've got 1 million tons of fibre most years to move into those markets. So the markets change, but our current biggest customers are Vietnam, Bangladesh, India, and China is coming back into the market after a period of not refusing to buy Australian cotton, basically, which has been a bit of a challenge for us, because they've been a really big part of our market over the last 10 or 15 years. But then we've just done recently, Ashley's team has done an analysis of where our brand partners make their products. And thankfully, those countries really do line up. So most of our brands making in Bangladesh, India, Indonesia, Vietnam, those kinds of countries. So there is a really good sort of matching of those as well.
Yeah, love it. And such important information for our audience. And Ashley, you did a post recently, I think it was on LinkedIn, and you said if customers can't buy Australian made, the next best thing is Australian grown,
Yeah,
which I absolutely loved. I was just like, she's nailed it. That's a key, it's a key message, because we all know it's very difficult with Australian made in terms of if you're not a higher end brand that can procure high price points, we know the cost of labor, et cetera, et cetera. It's not impossible, but it is challenging for many brands out there. But to be able to have an Australian grown story, even if the product is made offshore, of course, through ethical supply chain partners, it's still an amazing asset to a brand to have that product and that story to tell from a commercial perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to run off the back, Brooke mentioned where we do have a lot of our key markets as well. I think it's really exciting to see a lot of our brands and what the actual product is and where it's been made. I think it's very important to understand that, but you might get better denim coming out of Vietnam now, which I'm actually seeing a lot of shift in the market coming through there and through that country, from spinning right through to the end product for denim. It's really exciting because you'd never think Vietnam for denim, but they're actually starting to push that through a little bit more. And then you got Bangladesh that are doing some fantastic, plain tees, some really good knits, some chunky cotton knits, which, I just feel like that's a really exciting market to be in right now. And then you got India, who's looking at that more delicate kind of the cotton fabrics that are coming through with those more intricate details that are on that product. So it's not every region is going to be the same and provide you with the same outcome. It's very mindful that, I think it's very important to have your sourcing strategy really set and your key values in that sourcing strategy and the reasons why you want to be in a particular region over others and what the product is. So,
and I think the diversity of markets is important there too. Like certainly from the side, it's much makes much more sense for us to have a diversified, base of countries that we sell to. But from the brand side, it's also really good for them to have a diverse range of countries where they make. And as Ashley said, there is specializations there. So, a lot of the homewares brands we work with, for example, source out of India. Really well known for sheets and towels and that kind of thing, which is obviously, a lot of cotton. And for us as well, we're really happy to work with brands that use a lot of cotton. Like most of our cotton doesn't end up in the hands of Australian brands. It ends up in the hands of global partners who also, from a, Australian grown perspective are seeking Australian cotton because we're low risk from a human rights perspective.
Yeah.
And because in terms of the life cycle assessment of cotton, a lot of the impact is at the growing stage. For some of, for example, for water and that sort of thing. So a lot of the global brands we're working with, the drivers are not that, we can call out the Australian cotton because we're an Australian business. They're things like our sustainability credentials and the data that we can put behind our story, which means that they can meet a whole lot of other requirements that are coming at them globally. There's a huge legislation out of the EU, for example. You can't sell product into the US unless you know that it hasn't been made with any kind of human rights issue. And so from a growing perspective, we're able to, really sell that story into the global market and that premium global market as well.
Yeah, I think from the brand side, just listening to you both, share all of this amazing information, the first thing I think about is the trust. The trust is already there. We've got a green tick against trust. You've done all the hard work already. You've got the traceability tick and the transparency. And obviously from the brand side, they've got to have their actual manufacturing sorted. So, but that whole first stage of the process is already done. That hard work is done for the brands. They've got a sense of security that they can move forward from there. And I love that there's the diversity of availability across various different countries. So I just think, again, that's invaluable to brands. We're working with a lot of brands at the moment that are very focused on developing their India supply chain. They are looking at diversifying, and this is very interesting to me because many of them will be interested in Australian cotton. So I just think that, yeah, it's another asset to a brand to explore this whole area.
We've got a free trade agreement coming with India as well,
Yeah.
which will mean, and we're really, this is, I guess, on Cotton Australia's, the lobbying side,
Yeah.
that's a classic example of where Cotton Australia is lobbying hard for and working with the with DFAT, the Australian government, to get some more quota-free or tariff-free cotton into India. Which means it'll become more available to the spinners there because they want to buy it. It's such
Yeah.
great quality. I mean, they're really there's a lot of protection in the cotton industry globally. So there's a lot of subsidies that go on all over the world in lots of our competitor countries. And that makes it much harder for our farmers to compete because we're not subsidized at all.
Yeah.
So we really have to bank on our credentials of quality, sustainability, traceability, all of those things you've mentioned.
Yeah, that really invaluable to know that information. So before we move on, because I want to talk about the education side of what you do, is there anything else that you'd like to share about that go-to-market strategy? I'm sure there's been many good news stories over the journey, but do you think you've covered it, or is there anything else you'd like to share with our audience?
I'd just like to talk about a little bit about what the future holds for Australian cotton, because we've just finalised a strategic roadmap for Australian cotton, and it's taken us 18 months across industry, multi-stakeholder, both external stakeholders, but industry as well. And we've looked really closely at 5 key issues that we think are going to set us up for the next 10, 20 years for Australian cotton. Because what we kind of realised through the Cotton to Market program and literally thousands of conversations with our customers, brands and retailers and NGOs, etc., is that we've got what the world wants. Like, there's no doubt about it. Australian cotton ticks all the boxes. But there are some things that we haven't got in place that will allow us to deliver that cotton into the market with some of the stuff that we're going to need in future that meets all those legislative requirements that are coming out of the EU, etc. So the key issues are traceability. We have traceable cotton. We can trace a bale of cotton from the farm right through to the spinner. But beyond that, we lose track of our cotton and it often gets blended. So we're looking at how we can invest and what system we can invest in to help brands trace that cotton from the farm right through to the end product. That's a really important piece of work. Human rights is another one. We know we have a low risk here in Australia, but are we collecting the right evidence that our brands need to make sure they can make those claims on the product? Our sustainably certified cotton, we're looking at our program. My BMP was developed 30 years ago. It wasn't developed to be market facing. So we want to make sure that we can deliver that certified cotton into a world market that ticks all the boxes and it's fit for purpose for the future. And then we're looking at data. So we're spending $18 million as an industry over the next 3 years to build an on-farm data platform for each of our farmers that will collect farm level sustainability and impact data and yield data and a whole range of things kind of aggregated into one system that we can then permission up the supply chain to our customers, attached to bales, etc. Really exciting, world first kind of project. And the last one is Australian cotton marketing. Like Ashley and I, you're pretty much looking at the Australian cotton marketing team for Cotton to Market. We are tiny. We're a not-for-profit organisation. We spend very little money on telling our story to our customers. And so we're also looking at what are some of the funding mechanisms to help us potentially amplify those messages in future, especially if we get all these other things right. So it's a really exciting time for Australian, and we really want to also get the voices of our customers and our brands into that work so that we make sure that what we develop and what we invest in is going to, help them achieve what they need as well in future.
Yeah, amazing. So 5 really strong pillars there, and what a robust strategy. Not for the faint-hearted to undertake that over the next next few years.
It makes me feel tired just talking about it.
But what a good news story for Australian cotton. I just wanted to talk a little bit more about the traceability, because I'm sure the ears have pricked up, from our audience around traceability, because it is a big one. And I do have clients of mine saying, "Oh, yeah, I have tried to source Australian cotton." As you said, it's often blended.
Yes.
So maybe even some tips around how do they get there? What questions should be asked of potential supply chain partners to get there, to have at least, even though it might not be certified traceability, but at least the integrity of the information?
Yeah, that's a really great question, Elizabeth. And it's so funny. I think actually talking to a lot of brands and understanding first, as Brooke mentioned earlier, where their visibility is.
Yep.
You know, a lot of the brands we work with have tier 1, tier 2 visibility. They don't understand where the spinner sits anywhere within their suppliers as well. So I think, just say, for example, if you're a brand and you have visibility just at your fabric stage, I think making that connection with the spinner is very, very important for them to have that.
Yeah.
And also asking the questions around the yarn as well. What are they using? 100% Australian cotton? What other cottons are they using? Are they BCI accredited? I think.
Also, sorry to jump in, Ashley, but like, how are they keeping it physically separated at the
Yes.
mill?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then, you know, once those cones of yarn are developed, how are they keeping them physically separated at the fabric production stage? I mean, you know, the biggest risk of substitution and blending is at the spinner.
Right.
So that's why we put a lot of focus on our traceability system and our chain of custody at the spinning mill. But they really need to be getting evidence and you know, a lot of our brand auditors as well to go in and actually make sure that what their suppliers tell them they're doing, they're actually doing. Sorry.
Absolutely. No, and there's a to run off the back of that, there's a lot lost in translation as well. A lot of brands have agents, sourcing agents, to actually communicate with the manufacturer as well and the supplier. And I think a lot gets lost within that correspondence as well. You know, they may say, I want Australian cotton, but then to that agent, they'll go to the spinner and then they'll say they want Australian cotton, but not full Australian cotton. So the spinner, yeah, sure, we'll put Australian cotton in it. So they'll put 30% Australian cotton to give that cotton that the beautiful quality that Aussie cotton has, and we'll make that more conventional cotton into kind of the attributes that Aussie cotton has. So they'll blend it. But it just, there's so many moving pieces within the middle of that. There's just so much loss in that communication there. That's why it's so important, I think, actually going to their suppliers, having those conversations, as Brooke said, like, you know, asking them, how are they keeping it separated? What other cottons, where are they procuring cotton from elsewhere? And how do they clean out their systems? I think it's very also interesting. I do encourage, if you do get a chance, to actually go to the mills and walk the floor and look at what is going on. How are they cleaning? How are the workers? You know, do they look happy? What's the smells in there? What dyes are they using? I think having that site on the mill is so important for the brand to have ease and knowing that their operations are to your brand standard.
It's surprising how many brands do not have very good visibility of their supply chains, and they just trust their tier 1 suppliers that they're getting what they say they're getting. And we know for sure, I mean, we've got scientific traceability and testing. We know for sure that there is substitution going on. It's all about relationships and trust, as you said before, Elizabeth. Like, you know, if I was a brand, I'd want to make sure I knew who my spinners were, and I'd want to make sure I had a long-term trusted relationship with those supply chain partners right the way through. Now, I know that's not always easy, particularly for small brands with small volumes, and they don't have a lot of say and a lot of power in the relationships. But wherever you possibly can, you know, having that eyeball and that relationship, you know, first-hand relationship, I think is really, really important.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I really think this is such a valuable conversation, because businesses could literally be sitting there now writing their checklist. It's knowing which questions to ask.
Yes, exactly.
So I create a checklist for the Global Sourcing Expo. It's called Navigating the Sourcing Expo, because if you're new to an event like that, it's like, well, where do I even start? You're wandering around aimlessly, and you can apply that to this situation. It's like you need a structure, and it needs to be put in writing, and you need to get an actual response, a clear response back. And as you said, Ashley, make sure nothing is lost in translation. So it might be an email, but then it might be a video call. If you can't actually physically get to the mill or to the factory, at least have a video call so that you've said it out loud. Is this Australian cotton? Where is it coming from? How can I validate the actual source? So I think that whole education piece, again, you know, we're doing a little bit of that now, but that's so important. I think for, you know, anyone tuning in, it's about empowering yourself with the right information. And I have a lot of conversations on this amazing platform with amazing brands. And I recently spoke to Marnie Godding from Elk, and I looked at their transparency report is absolutely phenomenal. It is like massive and it's so detailed, and they're still working on it. They want to do
Yeah.
more. They want more transparency. But I think for those who perhaps aren't at this stage, even looking at other brands and the way that they're conducting themselves and their transparency reports, just to get a bit of a framework in place. So let's talk about the education side of the information that Cotton Australia shares. So let's see, on your website, you've got the Cotton Classroom. We've got Cotton Camp coming up in April, which I'd love for you to share with our audience. And there's also the Cotton Forum is also coming up in April. So yeah, let's talk about those and how our audience can kind of get involved again to immerse themselves in as much information as they can.
Absolutely. I'll kick it off with our Cotton Classroom programs as well. We have an education manager who works tirelessly on these programs, and they're just they're fantastic programs and foundation for teachers and for their resource in their classroom as well. So I'll just pick out 4 of the programs that are pivotal to that strategy, as well as our teacher program. So this equips teachers to enjoy a full day of learning about Australian cotton actually on a farm. And then with that learnings, they're able to share their knowledge with their students in the classroom, which is really exciting. We have our regional managers who support that program as well. And it really involves the grower and the teachers and getting them together. So that's a really fantastic program that we run. We also engage with the public at the Sydney Royal Easter Show and also ECA. So we have an activation space there to educate the general public about Aussie cotton. We also have a really fantastic VR to bring the public to the farm. So if we can't bring the farm to them, we take them to the farm through our great VR movie there. It's fantastic. So if you ever, I know we got Sydney Easter Show coming up. So if you happen to be across our pavilion or across our area, please pop in and enjoy being on a cotton farm for a little while. Thirdly would be our partnership with the Primary Industry Education Foundation Australia. This enables Cotton Australia to further reach teachers from all over the country and provide resources and really fun activities that they can download and share with their students to learn a little bit more about Aussie cotton. We also have our teacher kits as well. So they provide samples of Aussie cotton and other tactile resources for their students. And I think last year our education manager said they sent out 249 of these kits, which is fantastic. So we're actually getting Australian cotton into the classroom. So that's really exciting. And just to tap on, actually, Brooke, do you want to share a little bit of history about how Camp Cotton started?
Yeah, and I think, look, like as Ashley's kind of said, the best learning happens when you're actually on the farm and you're immersed in the industry.
Absolutely.
Talk to the real people who are doing it, because we can kind of talk about these things and show photos, but it's nothing like getting your boots dirty and getting out there on the farm. So when we first started Camp Cotton, it was about 2014, I think. And we just sort of had this idea that we should take some of our brands out and just show them cotton and just go and visit some farms and things like that. So the first year we had 8 people, and that included our staff. So in reality, we had about 4 or 5 brands that came along with us on that first year. And it was awesome. We had such a great time, and it's really grown from there. This year in 2024, we've got a grant from the Australian government to kind of widen out the program. And we've got about 60 delegates registered to come along to Camp Cotton this year. Global brands and NGOs like Textile Exchange and Sustainable Apparel Coalition, and some of those amazing organisations working in the fashion and sustainability space. And then also, of course, the Australian brands. And we take them out for 2-3 days of total cotton immersion, where you get to meet the farmers, see the cotton harvest, meet our researchers and see the science behind what we're doing. Go to the cottonseed distributors, which is where our seed gets kind of processed, and see how that whole process works, which is really, really interesting. And again, there's a lot of science behind that as well. And so, our brands just, have an amazing time just really getting to know the cotton industry from the inside out. And it's part of that transparency as well, making sure that everything is open. There's no question that doesn't get answered. And yeah, no, it's a really great few days.
Just to run off the back of that, Brooke, as well, and I think Brooke and I, we spoke about this last year as well. It was really great to have all these brands together because they were able not only to network with one another, but have open conversations about, things that are happening in the industry, and have those conversations and build that relationship as well. It was just fantastic to see, even competitor brands talking together and wanting to solve things that are happening in the industry, or talking about, oh, I didn't think about this with Australian cotton. Isn't this exciting? What do you guys think? And just, it was so open, and it was so transparent, and it was so honest, and it was so great to see all these brands just coming together and talking about our Australian cotton. It was just phenomenal.
So, that whole sustainability space, like, it really should be pre-competitive. Like, there's so many of these big issues that can be much better solved together in collaboration than, each brand trying to do their own thing and make the same mistakes and invest in the same things. So I think Camp Cotton really was one of the first things that was kind of done like that as an industry, all those years ago, really got brands starting to talk to each other. Yeah. And I just wanted to mention, day one of Camp Cotton is actually the Australian Cotton Forum in Sydney. And it's open to any brand or retailer or NGO working in this space who's interested can come along to that event. And yeah, it's a one-day seminar, and there'll be heaps of different panels and speakers, farmers and researchers and industry leaders, and looking at all sorts of topics from circularity right through to water use efficiency and an update on the markets and global pressures on cotton, and, a whole lot of things. And we've got a couple of really great international speakers coming to that as well.
Amazing.
We've got representatives from like the US Trust Protocol and the Organic Cotton Accelerator, and Fair Trade's not coming this time, they came last time. But yeah, there's going to be a great day. So that's open to anyone who wants to come along.
Amazing. So many opportunities to get involved. So definitely day one for the forum that's open to everyone. Definitely check that out. And we'll put the links to that event in our show notes so everyone knows where to find it. But I'm super excited about Camp Cotton because I'm fortunate enough to have been invited. Thank you so much. So 60 industry stakeholders, what a dynamic group. And as you said, it's going to be game changing over those few days. We were talking about before we started recording that I had stepped onto a cotton farm for the first time only, I think, 18 months ago. I went to visit Gundawindi Cotton. And I found it such an emotional experience. After 25 plus years in the fashion industry, it was the first time that I'd actually stood in a cotton field, and I was just looking around, mesmerized. And I was fortunate enough to gain a talk from Sam Coulton, who is the owner of Gundawindi Cotton. He was talking to me about, the generations after generations that had farmed the land and the whole industry. And I was just blown away. And it was such an emotional connection. So I was saying to you ladies, it should be compulsory for everyone in our industry to visit. So this is a great, Cotton Camp's a great opportunity. And I'm sure everyone's going to come back away from that with a huge mindset shift around the cotton industry, whether they're already sourcing Australian cotton or not. It'll be a game changer. So such exciting initiatives that your organisation is hosting. So yeah, as I said, I'll put the links to the Cotton Forum in the show notes. So based on you sharing that, for the Australian brands that are tuning in, and most likely a few international ones as well, what else would you like the fashion industry to know about Australian cotton that perhaps you haven't already covered?
Well, look, I think there's a couple of kind of key things here. One is that, this whole world of circularity, like, I think if you want to be circular, you need to be sourcing natural fibres, whether that be cotton or wool or something else. You can't be really circular unless you're sourcing natural fibres. And I think that sometimes gets a little bit missed. And we're certainly very focused on circularity and looking at how we can return cotton textiles into the farming system to really close the loop on that. So there's some really great, exciting work happening there. I think sometimes our brands are really surprised by our sustainability and human rights credentials. Like, we really want our brand partners to understand that and like right down into that really detailed level of the data we collect and the evidence we've got to back up the claims we make about Australian cotton. So we do spend a lot of time with our brands working through that and making sure they're very comfortable before they start sourcing our fibres. It's something I think is a surprise to a lot of, like, for example, the brands that come to Camp Cotton, is how much of our farming is driven by science. It is behind absolutely every decision we make. And we're probably leading the world when it comes to that. Every decision on the farm is backed up by data and innovation and technology. We're very big users of technology on the farm. Like every single farm has water probes. So cotton does not get watered unless we know the plant absolutely needs it at that time, because water is so precious and so expensive as well for farmers. So there's so much innovation and technology that gets used on the farm. I think it's something that's really surprising to a lot of the brands. And then lastly, I would just say that, you know, conventional cotton has a really bad name, you know, globally. It's kind of seen as the never to be sourced kind of thing. But in Australia, the standard of cotton production here is so high that even the conventional cotton coming out of Australia, we would argue, is at a far higher level than a lot of the certified cotton available on the market. So don't discount Australian cotton across the board as a commodity when you're looking at your sourcing strategies. And we've got a lot of data that can kind of, you know, make a lot of brands, and a lot of brands are just sourcing Australian cotton based on the data we can provide with those sustainability credentials. So just challenging a couple of those kind of perceptions around what, you know, what is and what isn't good and sustainable offering the market.
I think it's such an important message, Brooke, because it did get a bad rap for a while there. I think now we've got access to so much information, you know, we can use our discernment as businesses, but it did get a bad rap for a long time, which was really, really unfortunate because, you know, if we think about it, where is cotton used right across the board, not just in fashion, but in hospitals and so many important industries. I mean, where would we be without it? So, but as you said, the information that's at hand now in terms of the way that the Australian industry is operating is second to none.
Yeah.
So, you know,
and it's not to say we do everything right. We know the areas that we need to improve, and we're investing and we're putting science and technology behind those areas that we still know we need to improve. So, you know, it's just, I think it's really important that we collaborate and continually pushing the boundaries of sustainability as we go forward.
Yeah. Amazing. Such amazing information to share. Now we're getting to the pointy end now, ladies. I'm going to switch channels. The podcast is called Fashion Business Mindset. So I'm going to touch on this question because you've got such dynamic roles and you've got such amazing history in your field. So I'd like to ask you both in regards to your roles being so dynamic, what kind of systems or practices or processes do you have around mindset to keep you operating at an optimal level?
Yeah, I'll kick that off. Yeah, that's a really great question. I think it's important to have, and Brooke will probably agree with me, is that balance as well is very crucial. And one thing that I definitely do prioritize in my balance is exercise. I know when I'm feeling quite healthy and I'm exercising, I actually perform better at work, which, you know, I incorporate exercise into my daily routine as well. And Brooke thinks I'm mad, but I actually walk to work most mornings, which is roughly 7 kilometers. But I really enjoy it.
I think you'd be mad if you didn't walk.
Yeah, it's you know, I incorporate it in my day-to-day routine as well. And if I keep that routine in the morning, it just makes my productivity better. It also makes my mind better, and it also gives me just that feel-good feeling I have every day. So I love to exercise. I also think it's very important, and I'm sure there's a lot of people in this industry know with fashion, obviously you do travel quite a bit, as much as I guess you need to for your role. But I also think mapping out travel in advance is very important. Traveling sometimes isn't always glamorous, that it's a necessity foremost, and it can be very draining, not only on your body, but your mind as well. So I love to help myself is to have some planning ahead of time and understanding what that travel entails. And also I think it's very important sometimes, you know, Brooke and I like to say yes to everything as much as possible and go meet brands and NGOs and stakeholders that are very important and want to be that the advocate for our growers. But sometimes saying no as well does help when we just need a reset and regroup. I've got to have that couple of days at home and so forth. So I find planning very, very important. And lastly, Brooke and I have a really open line of communication with one another. And, you know, if I'm struggling or she's struggling, we generally reach out to each other and talk about it. And just having that that person to talk to, especially who knows what your tasks and your role entails, being able to be a sounding board for you sometimes, it just really helps. So they're probably kind of my three mindset points there.
Love it. Very,
Brooke?
very powerful. Yeah, Brooke, you're up.
Well, look, I think, I agree with everything Ashley said, and I would definitely kind of, reiterate that teamwork and support for each other, like just knowing each other personally is just so lovely, and knowing how each other ticks, and, accepting the differences and all of that is just, wonderful. A few years ago, I was really lucky to do the Australian Rural Leadership Program. And leadership is something that the cotton industry really invests in. And there's lots of programs available to the people in the industry who want to kind of, push themselves in terms of personal growth and development. And that, honestly, that program was it was life-changing. It was absolutely wonderful. And it's given me so many tools to use in my life and in my work. So that was awesome. I'm also, like, I'm 51. I play basketball twice a week, pretty slowly these days, but but I absolutely love it. I've been playing basketball since I was 12 years old, and I haven't stopped. And being in a team sport, is really important to me. Doing that kind of thing. I'm not a lover of the gym, so exercising, in a team environment, I absolutely love. I also meditate every day. Like, I think it's really important to try and, really get some of that reflection time and some quiet time. As Ashley said, like, we pretty much go at 100 miles an hour most of the time. And I find it very hard to say no to things. So, it's really nice to be able to just take that little bit of time out, even if it's only 10 minutes a day, to really reflect. And lastly, for me, I'm really lucky to live pretty close to the ocean, and I've grown up in the ocean, and salt water is in my veins, and it's so important to my health and mental health. Someone the other day told me that they referred to the ocean as the big blue pill, and that really resonated with me. And I get in the ocean at least twice a week all year round. So they're some of the things that help keep me balanced. And my two kids, I've got 4 kids altogether, and they keep me pretty busy as well, and balanced and in check, which is really nice.
Amazing. Such powerful insights there. I loved everything you both shared. The big blue pill is going to stick with me now. I've got the ocean. I've got the ocean at the end of my street. I'm actually in my home studio right now. The ocean's at the end of the street, and I've lived here for 10 years, and I can count maybe on one hand the amount of times I've been in that water. So you've just inspired me. I'm sure it's healing, and I need to get my zen on in the big blue pill.
Yeah. Well, I think it's that connecting to country kind of concept. Like, actually getting your shoes off and connecting to the earth. And I know it sounds like really hippie, but for me, I get energy out of that. And there's something about that. It's almost like, for me now, like I have to do it. Otherwise I feel a little bit, unhinged.
Yeah, I love it. I walk by it every single day. I go for my walks, but getting in the water, that's going to be a goal, getting in the water.
Or even if you just put your feet in.
Yeah, I know. As you said, very grounding, isn't it? Like, to do that, feet on the earth. Thank you, ladies, for sharing that. Now, finally, in closing, I'd like to ask you both, what excites you about the future of the Australian cotton industry?
Brooke will probably mirror this as well. The possibilities this roadmap will have on our growers, and also the rest of the supply chain, I'm really excited to see the outcome of that. We're this year is about all the planning and the research. So I'm so excited to see, what information comes of that, where the direction will go, and what the choice will be. So I'm so ready for that. Also, I'm really excited working with brands that I admire who are starting to have a real interest in Aussie cotton. And for me, I've been someone in the industry and growing up with some just love of brands, love of fashion, love of process, I guess, of garment construction. Those brands actually reaching out and wanting to use Australian cotton, wanting to know more about Australian cotton. I'm so excited, and I'm so ready to see what this year has in store for Aussie cotton. So they're probably my two.
Amazing.
This is one of the areas that Ash and I kind of really complement each other, because Ashley's really interested in the fashion side, and the fashion side, if I'm honest, is not the part that really excites me. The part that excites me are the fibres that go into that fashion and where they come from and how they were grown. And really, for me, it's about representing, the farmers and making sure their voice is heard at that very extreme end of the supply chain. And that goes for, brands here in Australia and also globally. So making sure that farmer voice is heard in all of those decisions that get made at that level that really affect them back on the farm. So I'm really excited about creating more value for our farmers out of all of those credentials they've worked so hard to achieve over the last 3 decades. Our sustainability program, the data we collect, the traceability we can offer now, all of that is what our customers want, and packaging that up and delivering it into the supply chain so there's additional value delivered back to the farmers for all that hard work is what I'm really excited about.
Amazing, ladies. You are doing phenomenal work. Thank you for pulling back the curtain at Cotton Australia today. It's been so amazing to share this information with our audience. I can't wait to join you on Camp Cotton. I think we're going to need to do another episode because there's going to be a lot that comes out of that amazing few days together. So watch this space, everyone. I'll be reporting back on, no doubt, what's going to be a transformational few days with an amazing group of industry thought leaders and change makers. So thank you for joining me. We'll put all of those links in the show notes so that our audience knows where to find you and how to take some action. And but as I said, congratulations to you, the entire organisation, and the phenomenal work that you are doing for advocating Australian cotton.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for having us. We really appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you so much for listening to the Fashion Business Mindset podcast. We'd love to keep connected. You can find us on Instagram and Facebook at Fashion Equipped. And if you'd like to find out more about our Start Your Fashion Business program and Your Mentor Collective, head to our website fashionequipped.com.au. If you've enjoyed this episode, please share this podcast with others, hit subscribe, leave us a rating and review. Let's do this together. Let's make the fashion business your business.
This is a Guide Your Light network production, creating podcasts with purpose.